Hey everyone, what's going on? So on July 22nd, the big news in sports was that the WWE owner Vince McMahon announced his retirement, mainly due to hush money and sexual allegations. But what really sticks out to me is that he announces his retirement just days before the upcoming SummerSlam. And if you've been following me for the last few months or so, back in March, I was talking a whole lot about this symbolism with peacocks and how the WWE moved its network to Peacock and how Triple H, who is the husband of Stephanie McMahon, who is now taking over the WWE, he just so happened to retire or announce his retirement on National Peacock Day. And then, of course, we had the Will Smith slap that was linked up to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and in their college, they have the mascot as the peacock and a whole bunch more, right? There was a whole lot of peacock symbolism. The St. Peter's Peacocks had the big upset in the college basketball tournament on National Peacock Day. Once again, the same day that Triple H also announced his retirement. And if you look into the peacock symbolism, you'll learn about this angel called Melek Taus. And it's very important to the first Wednesday of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar. And Wrestlemania, where Vince McMahon did his final wrestling match ever, it just so happened to fall on the first day of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar. And now the upcoming SummerSlam just so happens to be held in Nissan Stadium. So I know that it is somehow related to this peacock symbolism. And there's also a big connection to Jesus Christ. And I will show this in a second, but it links back to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Think about Austin 316, right? Austin 316. Even Stone Cold Stunner, it's 3 words with 16 letters. And a whole bunch more with Austin and 316. But in the Hebrew lettering, if you go to Google Translate and type out Jesus Christ, the translation they give you in the Hebrew lettering, if you use that in the gematria calculator, his name just so happens to sum to 316. And a few other things I talked about recently was Donald Trump and Herbert Hoover, their names both also equal 316. And I know that the symbolism is somehow related back to all of that with the stock market and so on, because I blogged about Vince McMahon and the peacock symbolism, and then literally I think the next day, or maybe 2 days later, I can't remember, but we get this story in the mainstream news about Martha Stewart and her peacocks that all died from a coyote attack, right? And there's some interesting things here. I'm going to skip over this, but the storyline with Martha Stewart is very interesting. Think about Martha Stewart, stocks, and so on. And when you look up Martha Stewart, she just so happened to start selling stock in her company on the exact same day that the WWF also started selling stock, right? Back in 1999. So back in 1999, on the exact same day, Martha Stewart and the WWF both started selling shares of stock for the first time. This article even calls her Stone Cold Martha Stewart. So you know there's this relationship with how Donald Trump and Francis Bacon gematria equals 316, just like how Jesus Christ does in Hebrew, just like how Herbert Hoover equals 316 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. And then think about Stone Cold Steve Austin and the number 316. And think back on WrestleMania this year, the day that Vince McMahon was in his final match where he got a Stone Cold Stunner after the match. Him and Austin Theory or whatever both got Stone Cold Stunnered at WrestleMania 38. But that was on the date 4-3. And if you look at this date 4-3, a lot of people believe that this was the day that Jesus was actually crucified in history, which was also the 15th of Nisan, right? So, and of course, Jesus Christ equals 43 in gematria. And Jesus Christ has a whole bunch of connections to Julius Caesar, which I will talk about here in a second. But the whole reason that Austin Theory and Vince McMahon had this storyline going into WrestleMania. It had to do with Austin Theory stealing Cleopatra's egg from Vince McMahon. And think about Cleopatra, who had a kid with Julius Caesar, and Cleopatra, who also had kids with Mark Antony. And this narrative actually relates back to what I was talking about in 2018, right after we had the Stoneman Douglas shooting, and that was on Valentine's Day, like the Valentine's Day Massacre. Remember, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in history happened just before Herbert Hoover became the president, and then later that year we got the stock market crash. But a lot of that stuff going on back then, the Super Bowl was at US Bank Stadium just before the Stoneman Douglas shooting. A lot of the things that were going on were linked up to the stock market. And then we had the Austin Bomber that was linked up to Stone Cold Steve Austin in wrestling, which I'll explain here in a minute. But the Austin Bomber's name was Mark Anthony Condit. And then later in the year, on October 24th, we had the mail package bomber, just like the Austin Bomber. And he sent like mail package bombs to Joe Biden and Obama and so on. But his name was Cesar Sayoc. So you knew there was this relationship with Mark Antony, Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar died on the Ides of March, and then the following year, the day we were watching for was the Ides of March, and we got a shooting in New Zealand at Christ Church, New Zealand, at 2 mosques and so on. And think about Christ Church, once again, goes back to this narrative with Jesus. And think about Jesus too, right? Jesus Christ, JC, Julius Caesar, JC. Julius in gematria just so happens to equal 43. Just pointing it out. Julius is 43. Caesar is 43. Write out Jesus Christ. It's 43. Like I said, historians believe that he was actually crucified on the date 4-3. But if you look up Julius Caesar too, the Julius Caesar's assassination it was led by a guy named Cassius Longinus, right? And this is interesting because think about how the spear of destiny and so on, and how the Roman soldier who supposedly stabbed Jesus Christ, his name was also Longinus, right? So they got the JC initials. They're linked up with gematria. Both their assassinations had to do with a guy named Longinus. And oddly enough, I'm just now seeing this, but Longinus equals 456 in the Jewish cipher. And that really sticks out because this 456 number is a big number I talked about in the previous video that had to do with the stock market and how it's linked up to the TV show Squid Game and so on. So how interesting that Longinus would equal that. But anyway, let me backtrack. I want to explain a little bit of the story of what I am talking about here and how it's all stems back to this thing with Julius Caesar and so on. And, so he steals Cleopatra's egg, so back in 2018, and this is also too, before I get into it, this is why right now we have the Stoneman Douglas shooter trial going on, right? Nicholas Cruz, and Cruz in Spanish means cross. And remember the same day that Ivana Trump died, so I don't even know how to explain it. Just go back and watch the last video that I put out where I talked about Ivana Trump, the stock market, and so on. Ivana Trump died on July 14th, which is the day that Joe Biden was in Israel, and a whole bunch of stuff. But it's linked back to the stock market, and that's why Nicholas Cruz is in the news. But the same day that Ivana Trump died, I blogged about how I had a bunch of synchronicity with cross, right? And once again, that was on the date 14/7 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. Jesus equals 147, and the word cross equals 147. Let's put it out real quick. Jesus 147, cross 147. I had a whole bunch of synchronicity with cross on the same day Ivana Trump died, 14/7, and my name even equals 147, right? So I knew there's something important to cross symbolism, but I didn't understand the narrative really. I knew it was somehow synced up to Jesus and cross. And remember, Joe Biden wrecked his bike on the crosswalk. And just after that, I started having these synchronicities with Cruz. And Cruz, of course, means cross in Spanish. So, it's just interesting how this narrative's going on here. And Joe Biden also, after he went to Israel, he went and met, can't think of the guy's name, Mohammed bin Salman or whatever, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And that links in here because back in 2018, after we had all the Stoneman Douglas thing, and then we had the Austin bomber, that was the first year they ever had a greatest Royal Rumble in wrestling. It was the greatest Royal Rumble, and that just so happened to be held in Saudi Arabia. And then later that year, they had the Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia, and this was just after Jamal Khashoggi had died, or however you say his name, Khashoggi. And remember how they blamed the death of him on the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. This was all in the same year. So WWE had their first ever greatest Royal Rumble. It was held in Saudi Arabia. Later that year, Jamal Khashoggi died. Then we had the Crown Jewel that was also held in Saudi Arabia, and it was a big deal because of the Jamal Khashoggi death and so on. And there was more going on with that too. We also had the death of George Bush, right? George H.W. Bush died in November that year. And remember, just after Jamal Khashoggi died, we had the two Saudi Arabia girls who were found in the Hudson. They were found dead in the Hudson River. And that was important because that was linked up to the Sully, the pilot who wrecked, saved the people in the Hudson or whatever, the miracle on the Hudson. And that's why after George Bush died, they made a big old news story about how his dog was named Sully and a whole bunch of other things. But the point that I'm making is that Joe Biden just went to Saudi Arabia, and of course, he brought up the death of Jamal Khashoggi with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and so on. So, what are the odds that that's going on? We got Nicholas Cruz, the Stoneman Douglas shooter, in the news. But anyway, if you go back to 2018, after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, there was another school shooting, and it was in Maryland. And they said that the shooter's name was Austin Wyatt Rollins. And that's an interesting name when you think about the WWE, because there's wrestlers, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bray Wyatt, and Seth Rollins. And that shooting was 34 days after Stoneman Douglas, and the word Maryland, where this shooting was, equals 34. And they said that he was stopped by a cop that was 34 years old, and this was just before WrestleMania 34. And I just thought, man, there must be something important to WrestleMania 34 with this story. And the very next day was the day that the Austin bomber was found, or the Austin bomber committed suicide. And that just so happened to be 3 months and 4 days after Stone Cold Steve Austin's birthday. And you knew it was further connected to the WWE because one of the victims of the Austin bomber, they had a story in the media about how he was friends with Mark Henry, and Mark Henry was also a WWE wrestler. And oddly enough, Mark Henry was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame at WrestleMania 34 that year. And then a few days after the Austin bomber story, we got this story about the Hart family who was driving their Blazer or whatever it was over the edge of a cliff. That was the big story. How this Hart family drove over the edge of the cliff. And they even showed how one of the kids in the story, he was in the mainstream media back in 2014 because he was a black kid hugging a white cop at the Michael Brown shooting. And that cop's name was Sergeant Brett Barnum. And I was thinking, man, this must be synced up to, wrestling, and think about the Hart family. And then I saw Sergeant Brett Barnum, and I looked up Bret Hart. And of course, Bret Hart's name is Bret Sergeant Hart. So I was like, that has to be related. And then I started thinking about how these people went over the edge of a cliff, right? And that's interesting because Bret Hart's brother was named Owen Hart, and Owen Hart just so happened to die when he fell from the ceiling at a pay-per-view called Over the Edge. And Mark Henry was also trained by Bret Hart, and Owen Hart, he died at the age of 34. So once again, I knew there was this like interrelated relationship going on with these news stories and how it linked up to the WWE. And also we had the Stoneman Douglas shooting that was really important. And think about how that's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Well, I remembered back in high school, just before Owen Hart died, I went to my friend's house and I watched a pay-per-view called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And if you look up that St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Owen Hart fought Mark Henry in a tag team match at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and then he defeated Mark Henry. So Mark Henry even fought Owen Hart at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre on Valentine's Day of 1999. And then 99 days later, Owen Hart died over the edge on 5/23/99. Well, the 99th prime number is 523, right? So Owen Hart dies 99 days later on 5/23 in the year 99, and the 99th prime is 5/23. The word cliff equaled 99. Also, Mark Anthony Condit, the Austin Bomber, his name equaled 99. And the Austin Bomber also died 9 months and 9 days after Mark Henry's birthday, which was on the date 6/12. And 6/12 is this big number we've talked about for years, linked up to school shootings and so on. So then, in relation to Owen Hart, if you look up Stone Cold Steve Austin, basically, ultimately it led to his retirement because he broke his neck because in 1997, Owen Hart did a bad pile driver with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he actually broke his neck. And it led to a lot of things in his career that eventually he had to kind of retire because he had broke his neck and he needed surgeries and all this stuff, right? But 5 months and 23 days after Owen Hart died then, so this was in 1997 where Owen Hart did this. And Stone Cold still wrestled and so on, but like I said, it ultimately led to his retirement. But then when Owen Hart died on 5/23/1999, 5 months and 23 days later, the narrative in wrestling was that Stone Cold would get hit by a car and at Survivor Series, that way he could go get surgery on his neck that Owen Hart had screwed up from years before or whatever, right? So he went and got his surgeries done. The narrative was he got hit by a car 5 months and 23 days later, which allowed him to go get his surgeries and so on. Once again, that number connecting to 99. But if you look up Stone Cold, he eventually came back on September 24th of the year 2000, which was 316 days later after, they had him hit by a car and so on. So 316 days later at this event called Unforgiven. And think about Austin 316 once again. Stone Cold Stunner is 3 words, 16 letters. Jesus Christ 316. But Unforgiven being on September 24th is interesting too because that's Stephanie McMahon's birthday, right? Vince McMahon's daughter, who's now the CEO of the WWE, who's married to Triple H. And Triple H is important too because H is the 8th letter. Think about triple H's like 888, and then Greek isopsophy, the word Jesus equals 888. But in relation to Valentine's Day, Stephanie McMahon shares a birthday with Nicholas Cruz, who is the Stoneman Douglas shooter, September 24th. And once again, Cruz means cross. There's this big relationship to Jesus Christ. And if you go back and watch my previous video where I talked about the death of Ivana Trump, I talked a lot about Donald Trump and the number 424, and how Donald Trump is on a coin in Israel with King Cyrus, and Donald Trump has the same gematria value as the Messiah in Hebrew and a bunch of things, right? Donald Trump, the Messiah. And in 2019, a huge narrative that we were following had to do with Tisha B'Av falling on August 10th and August 11th. And August 11th just so happened to be Hulk Hogan's birthday. And it was also London Breed's birthday, the mayor of San Francisco. And of course, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And to the Jews, the Messiah will return through the Golden Gate. which is interesting in relation to that narrative. And this is all about the building of the third temple and, Donald Trump being linked up to the Messiah and so on. So it's just interesting how Donald Trump also equals 316, like Jesus Christ, in, the Hebrew, right? So Donald Trump in all capital letters equals 424, which I've talked, just watch the previous video. But he's important to the Messiah that way, but he's also important to Jesus Christ, who many think is the Messiah, right? In the Hebrew lettering as well. So it's like interesting, And Donald Trump's linked up to the stock market, and a bunch of things. But Herbert Hoover, the stock market president, equals 316. Of course, Tisha B'Av began on Herbert Hoover's birthday that year, August 10th. And a big thing I talked about was the band Slipknot and performing for the first time ever at the Iowa State Fair that year on August 10th. But on the next day, on August 11th, a man from Zion, Illinois, died at the Slipknot concert. Of course, Zion is Israel, right? So, once again, there's this relationship that goes back to the Messiah and so on. In this whole narrative, too, on Hulk Hogan's birthday, it was linked up to earthquake symbolism that I've talked about with Ronda Rousey, clear back in 2015, right after Roddy Piper died. There's so much to explain. But Hulk Hogan, I'll explain it here in a little bit because it has to do with the movie They Live that Roddy Piper's in and the band Disturbed releasing the song called The Vengeful One just before Roddy Piper died, where they did a video where they mimicked the movie They Live and they shot up the news people. And then Ronda Rousey won her fight just after the day after Roddy Piper had died. And then a couple weeks later, we got that Bridgewater shooting. And that Bridgewater shooting was how a guy shot up the news people. So you knew it was related back to Roddy Piper in the movie They Live. This was in 2015. But there was also this big narrative with earthquakes and Philadelphia that was important to that. And Hulk Hogan just so happened to get his ribs broke against Earthquake the wrestler. And Hulk Hogan got his revenge in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. And the building, the Comcast Center in Philadelphia, has the black cube on it. Or it has the cube on the top. And the cube represents the New Jerusalem, right? Where the third temple will be built. So there's a whole bunch of interrelated symbolism that goes back to this with Hulk Hogan and so on. And think about Hulk Hogan, HH, 88, Herbert Hoover, 88, Trump equals 88. 2018, the year with the Stoneman Douglas shooting, that was the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash. The Super Bowl was held at US Bank Stadium, that equals 88. Whole bunch of stuff. But I guess the moral of the story is think about Tisha B'Av and how it was linked to San Francisco, the Golden Gate, earthquakes, so on, right? And what's even more interesting, too, in relation to Philadelphia is Ronda Rousey actually won her fight in 34 seconds the day after Roddy Piper died. And then I discovered all this stuff with Ronda Rousey and Roddy Piper and how they were linked to the number 34. All kinds of stuff with the number 34. Such as, trying to think, Ronda Rousey trained fighting on like a place at 34 degrees north, and Roddy Piper had 34 championships, and I can't even remember. I have a poster somewhere, but where I talked all about it. But Ronda Rousey lost her first fight to 34-year-old Holly Holm, and Holly Holm's debut fight was on 3-4. I pointed out some other things, how the fight was on 8-1, and 34 years after 8-1 was the year that she won that fight, and so on. And oh man, there's more than what I wrote in here, but there was all kinds of 34 stuff, that was linked up to Ronda Rousey. But the moral of the story is that, so I'm talking about all this 34 with Ronda Rousey, and then Ronda Rousey comes out at the Royal Rumble in Philadelphia, right? The Royal Rumble, and think about that in regards to earthquakes. But in 2018, just before the Stoneman Douglas shooting, Ronda Rousey comes out at the Royal Rumble dressed like Roddy Piper, and she announces that she's going to make her debut wrestling match in the WWE and join the WWE at Wrestlemania 34 in 2018. Of all things. For years I've been saying Ronda Rousey synced to this number 34. Then she joins the WWE at WrestleMania 34. And, of course, she fights Triple H and Stephanie McMahon at WrestleMania 34. And the reason that they did that was because at WrestleMania 30 that was held in San Francisco, The Rock brought Ronda Rousey into the ring to fight Stephanie McMahon and Triple H or whatever. So, and that was all linked up to the Golden Gate Bridge and all kinds of stuff, So Triple H, he dressed like Terminator, and then they just had that Terminator movie Genesis that came out where they had the crash on the Golden Gate Bridge. And 2000, was it? I can't remember what year the movie San Andreas came out. I think it was the same year as WrestleMania 30. The movie San Andreas came out where they show the ID in the beginning, and it has the girl's birthday is the anniversary of the Golden Gate Bridge. And then The Rock is in that movie, and The Rock, of course, is from San Francisco. And he's a helicopter pilot, and that's why his father died on Shane McMahon's birthday, just before Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter, because Shane McMahon was in a helicopter crash just after WrestleMania 34, or just after or just before WrestleMania 34. Shane McMahon was in a helicopter crash. Then The Rock's father dies on Shane McMahon's birthday, and The Rock's father's birthday was Vince McMahon's birthday. And then Kobe Bryant dies in a helicopter crash. And once again, The Rock was the helicopter pilot in the movie San Andreas. It's about the earthquake symbolism in San Francisco. And, think about the Royal Rumble, like I said. Royal Rumble, the greatest Royal Rumble. Earthquakes. Think how Ronda Rousey just won the Royal Rumble in 2022 when she was 34 years old, too. She just won the Royal Rumble at the age of 34. And think how there was a Japan earthquake right after Ronda Rousey's 34th birthday that was linked up to this too. I have a video on that as well, linked up to Ronda Rousey turning 34 years old. Think about the movie They Live, right? The movie They Live, 2022 on November 4th, it will be the 34th anniversary of the movie They Live coming out that's important to Roddy Piper. And think how Vince McMahon just announced his retirement a span of 34 days before his birthday, right? And think about how the movie They Live is also a movie by John Carpenter. Think about that with Jesus, the carpenter, right? And, it's just craziness. John Carpenter, I'm pretty sure gematria even equals the same as Jesus, right? John Carpenter, or 147. Maybe it's the Francis Bacon ciphers. I thought he equaled, or maybe he's 74 years old right now. That's what it is. We'll look him up really quick. John Carpenter. But, just think about it. John Carpenter, the relationship to Jesus. Yeah, he's 74 years old. It's going to be the 34th. It's actually currently the 33rd anniversary of They Live. And think about that with Jesus. Think about how Vince McMahon also announced his retirement just 33 days before his birthday, or a span of 34 days. But the Carpenter, 33, Jesus, there's a humongous relationship that goes back to Jesus with all of this. And also, in regards to earthquakes, when the Messiah returns, there's supposed to be a great earthquake, right? So, just once again, it's interesting how it all is kind of twined into here. There's something definitely important to earthquakes and how it links up. But so Roddy Piper's in the movie They Live, right? And, well, I'll skip over this for now, but he's in the movie They Live, where they shoot up the news station. And if you go back and there's this video called The Vengeful One of Disturbed, the band. And if you watch this video, he goes and shoots up the news station, right? And then we had the death of Roddy Piper just right after this video came out. Then we had that Ronda Rousey won her first fight. Then we had the Bridgewater shooting, which is the news shooting. So you knew it was connected to that movie They Live. But something else that is very interesting with the band Disturbed is that the band Disturbed wrote the theme song called Break Glass for Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? It's called Break Glass. It's his probably his most famous intro music, right? But Stone Cold actually debuted this at Unforgiven when he came back after his surgery, so it was 316 days later. He debuted this on Stephanie McMahon's birthday, which is also Nicholas Cruz's birthday. And further to connect it to Roddy Piper, if you look up Roddy Piper, he had a feud with Stone Cold just before he died. Just before he died, they had this beef or whatever that was going on because of their podcasts and so on. So Roddy Piper, he had a beef with Stone Cold just days before he died and so on. So it's related back to Stone Cold Steve Austin with all of this. And once again, think about the Austin Bomber, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Think about Austin Theory, right? Once again, Austin Theory. Think about my theory linking up to the Austin and Stone Cold Steve Austin and how this is linked back to Cleopatra's egg. Also, in regards to the egg, think about Jesus and the resurrection and Easter and the egg, right? The fertility. I mean, it's just. And then Cleopatra, who has a kid with JC, like Julius Caesar. His name's even Caesarean, right? Like a Caesarean section. And Julius Caesar also died on the 74th day of the year, right? Jesus equals 74, Cross 74, Gospel 74, Messiah 74, Joshua 74, Yeshua 74, Muhammad 74. Remember how the Christ Church shooting at the mosque was on the Ides of March, the 74th day of the year? So, I mean, even through there they have a connection. Julius Caesar, he died at the age of 55. The word God equals 55. The word Satan equals 55. There's just a humongous relationship with God, Julius Caesar, Jesus Christ, and so on. And but the band Disturbed too. There's something interesting. We just got this story about monkeypox too, right? And like monkeypox was declared like a health emergency or whatever. And it has to be connected to the band Disturbed, I swear, because remember, the band Disturbed has a song called Down with the Sickness. And remember at the very beginning, or a big part in the song is he goes, ooh, wah, ah, 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 right? And possibly it's just me, but I've always associated that with a monkey sound, right? It's whatever. It's like an evil monkey, like, ooh, wah, ah, 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 right? And I don't know. I thought that everybody associated with that. And I can't find it, but my brain, I have always associated that song with like an evil monkey noise. And it's just interesting. That song's called Down with the Sickness. And, we just came out with, monkeypox is getting real big in the news, right? So you got monkeypox, Down with the Sickness, the band Disturbed, where he makes that monkey noise. It's just, I don't know. I just feel like there is something definitely interrelated to that song and how it's connected here. But anyway, the further into to Roddy Piper, the after the Austin Bomber story, I think it was in June. I can't remember what day it was, but the big news story a couple months later was that there was a shooting at the newspaper company, and it was in Maryland, right? And once again, think about that school shooting that was in Maryland and how Maryland equals 34. Then we get this newspaper shooting in Maryland. And once again, Roddy Piper, the news, and so on. And the address was 888 Best Gate. And that was interesting because I started thinking, think about Triple H, right? 888, once again, Jesus. Since 2014, I have pointed out how Jesus equals 888 in Greek isopsophy. And in 2014, Triple H actually had this fight with Daniel Bryan. And Daniel Bryan at the time had grown his beard out, and he had long hair, and he looked a lot like Jesus. And then I pointed out how Triple H was the 8th letter, which was 3 8s, right? A lot like how Jesus has the number 888. And I'm just bringing that up, because the address was 888 Best Gate. See, it's like connected to Triple H and so on. But Royal Rumble also equals 888 in the Jewish ciphers. Donald J. Trump also equals 888 in the Sumerian. So does I think Harry S. Truman equals 888 too, and he has a big connection to Harry Truman and so on. But I guess, the point I'm making is that what are the odds there was a newspaper shooting and then they said the address was 888, it was connected up to Triple H, the same narrative that I was following. And then, like I said, after WrestleMania 34, we had the greatest Royal Rumble that was held in Saudi Arabia. And this was actually the last time that Chris Jericho, the wrestler, wrestled in the WWE. And that's interesting. And it was also the last time that Mark Henry had an in-ring appearance. Remember, Mark Henry connected to the Austin Bomber. But Chris Jericho, that was the last time he wrestled in the WWE. And remember, later that year, we got the death of Jamal Khashoggi. And then we had the crown jewel that was held in Saudi Arabia. And pretty sure that was linked up, too, to a helicopter crash. And I can't remember. I'll skip over that. But I know there was a helicopter crash that was linked to this, too. But like I said, Joe Biden was just in Israel. He met with the crown prince of Saudi Arabia that talked about Jamal Khashoggi and so on. But I'm losing my train of thought here. But Chris Jericho, he's important because he signed a contract with the All Elite Wrestling, and that was the same day that Donald Trump gave a speech about building the wall, and that was during the time of the government shutdown over the wall and so on. But Chris Jericho, think about the walls of Jericho, and his birthday is 11/9, which is the day the Berlin Wall came down, the day that they announced Donald Trump had won the election in 2016 and so on. And what's interesting, too, is in 2016, right after Donald Trump won, they announced he won the election, like, I think 4 or 5 days later, in Christchurch, New Zealand, there was a major earthquake. Something I had actually talked about a couple months before, and how it was linked up to Prince Charles, and then on Prince Charles's birthday, there was a giant earthquake. But, it's just biblical, the walls of Jericho. When they took... The walls of Jericho actually came down after Moses and the Exodus and so on. He led them out of slavery and so on. And then he goes up on the mountain, whatever, and there's another earthquake too there, but Moses stays back, and then they go and they take down the walls of Jericho, which is all by the numbers, walk around it 7 times with 7 priests and whatever. But that was the first place, Jericho was the first place that they took back after, when they entered the land of Canaan. And it's also interesting, we just had that, the guy from The Godfather or whatever it was, the actor with the last name Cain or whatever, kind of like Canaan and so on. There's some interesting parallels going on. A lot of gangster movie guys dying recently too, you notice that? A lot of gangster stuff, but in relation to the number 34, Moses has been 34 has been a huge number with Moses over the years in the Civil War, and a whole bunch of stuff. Canaan equals 34, Red Sea 34, and Sinai equals 34. Like, just a humongous number. 34 and 43, big numbers with the Civil War. And Moses, Abe Lincoln and Moses both supposedly freed the slaves. 2019 with that Christchurch attack, there was a big thing going on with Moses, and that's why the Rams had lost in the Super Bowl. Moses brought in the Age of Aries, which is a ram. Talked about all this stuff. Just kind of skip it over here, though, but National Peacock Day. Vince McMahon fought his last match on 4/3 or 3/4, which was the second day of Nissan. That's why we got SummerSlam and Nissan Stadium. I'm just really interested to see what happens at SummerSlam as in regards to symbolism, or there's definitely something going on with the symbolism of it. And remember, a lot of this stems back, too, to the RV bombing that happened on Christmas, which was Jesus' birthday, too. I'll leave a link. Like I said, I have a playlist. I'll leave it in the description. Because there's a lot of information. I'm trying to backtrack and explain it all, but no doubt it's Cleopatra's egg, linked up to Julius Caesar, Easter, resurrection, Jesus. And the big day I've been following too is August 6th, which is when Tisha B'Av begins this year. And in 2018, a humongous day that went on was August 6th. And it had a lot to do with this same symbolism because the Austin bomber was wearing pink gloves. And there was this big pink narrative that I had been following for years. And on August 6th, we got Pink, the singer, had canceled her tour in Australia. And Alex Jones got kicked off of Twitter. Of course, Alex Jones is from Austin, Texas. And a whole bunch more, you know. So there's something important to August 6th. I don't know what, if it is something big going on. I think it's just something I'm supposed to understand. We will find out. We will soon find out, you know. It's almost August 6th, but 2018, a humongous day was August 6th. So once again, all the symbolism coming back up, it just makes me think there's just something even greater important to that, you know. It's was even funnier too in regards to cliffs. After the family drove off the cliff, I even went back and typed in cliff on my blog, and the only post I had about cliffs was this post from 2016 about a cliff collapse because of an earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand, right? And that was on Valentine's Day. And I remember thinking, that's crazy. That was on Valentine's Day, and you know, Stoneman Douglas and Valentine's Day, and Owen Hart and Valentine's Day. There's something interesting with how that links up, you know. And, you know, and then I was talking about the Ides of March and so on with this narrative in 2018. And then later on the Ides of March, we got the Christchurch mosque shooting. It's like, what are the odds, you know? It was showing me to pay attention to Christchurch, New Zealand, you know. But think about all that 9-9 stuff, too. The 99 stuff I talked about earlier with Owen Hart. Vince McMahon, if you go from 9-9 to the day he retired, it's 316 days. WWE equals 99. His full name, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, equals 666 as well. Just interesting in regards to how I'm talking about Jesus and so on, you know. And he actually stepped down as the CEO on June 17th, and then he announced his retirement on July 22nd. Well, that's 99 days before Stephanie McMahon's birthday, even. 99 days. Remember, her birthday is same day as Nicholas Cruz, same day that Stone Cold returned, and he had the song by Disturbed. You know, Jesus died age 33. Vince retired 33 days before his birthday, or a span of 34. Hush Money's 34. The date 218 is really big into this narrative too, and 218 is the day that leaves 316 days in the year. They Lives 218, Donald's 218, Trump's 218. Go back and watch the previous video. Ivana's 218, the presidential alert on 218. August 6th is the 218th day of the year. The mail package bomb was on 10/24 in 2018, which was 2 months and 18 days after the 218th day, August 6th, which was also important to conspiracy theory, because the guy who coined the term conspiracy theory was born on August 6th and died on October 24th. And conspiracy theory equals 218. That's why Alex Jones was kicked off of Twitter that day. Vince McMahon also retired on 7/22, and for years we've talked about how 22 divided by 7 equals 3.14 or 0.314, but I think it's 3.14 pi. But if you do it the other way, 7 divided by 22, it equals 0.318, and this is a number we've associated with God over the years. 318 is the supposed God number, you know, and from the TV show Touch with Kiefer Sutherland and a whole bunch of stuff, but the Saudi prince, his birthday is 31/8, which is interesting in regards to that narrative. Julius Caesar also got assassinated. I've been talking a lot about the connections to assassinations. Think about Vince McMahon and his middle name being Kennedy. You know, They Live came out on 4/11 or 11/4. JFK died at 411 Elm Street. That's why we got the Johnny Depp stuff, because on 4/11, because he was in Nightmare on Elm Street. But August 6th this year is 144 days after the Ides of March. 144 is a big number with political assassination that I explained in the last video. Julius Caesar equals 86. Also 185, like stock market crash, like Donald John Trump. Think how 9/11 is important to August 6th as well. That's the day World Trade Center construction began. Osama bin Laden equals 218. The World Trade Center equals 218. Twin Towers equals 218. 9/11 was 185 days after Osama's birthday. Ronda Jean Rousey's 185. Bridgewater equals 185. Roddy Piper died 185 days before Ronda Rousey's birthday. Japan equals 185. We just had that volcano eruption in Japan as well. I just pointed out, with the band Disturbed, I feel like possibly there's something connected to Simon and Garfunkel with the Sound of Silence. Down with the Sickness even equals 86. A lot of this narrative that I'm talking about in 2018 was linked up to bridge collapses too, and on the Ides of March in 2018, because I'd been predicting this bridge collapse leading up to the Super Bowl and so on, and then on the Ides of March just after the Super Bowl, we had the FIU bridge collapse that was linked up to the dream symbolism that I've been recently talking about that was related to the Peacock symbolism, because the first Wednesday of Nisan was April 6th earlier this year, the day I had the dream about Nelly and a bunch of stuff important to that dream symbolism. If you watch the previous video, you'll understand, hopefully. But, that's the day of the Peacock angel, Malik Taus, and that angel is also linked up to the angel Gabriel and a whole bunch of stuff. But Gabriel was the one who showed me to pay attention to 4 and 6, and 6 and 4, and was linked up to Nelly, who's playing at the Iowa State Fair this year. Somebody also pointed out how, I've been talking about the Iowa State Fair is really important to Donald Trump saying he was Batman at the Iowa State Fair, and Batman's also related to August 6th. But Donald Trump said he was Batman on August 15th of 2015, right for the train wreck shooting in the theater, like the Batman theater shooting, but that was on Ben Affleck's birthday, and I pointed out how Ben Affleck just got remarried to Jennifer Lopez, but Jennifer Lopez also used to be married to the singer Mark Anthony or whatever, so it's pretty interesting. Mark Anthony also died on the date August 1st, the same day that Ronda Rousey won her fight in 34 seconds, right after Roddy Piper died. And 2018, Pope Francis was 81 years old, and Pontiff means bridge builder, and August 1st was the day of the Minneapolis bridge collapse that fell 81 feet, and the main trusses were 81 meters long, and it took him 81 minutes to transport everyone to the hospital, and the word Pope in Hebrew, gematria, equals 81. So, the Golden Gate Bridge was 81 years old that year. Golden Gate Bridge equals 81 in gematria, I think. Further to Stone Cold at WrestleMania this year, on the first day of Nisan, the first day of WrestleMania, he was the headline guy, and he defeated Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38, right? Think about it. Owen Hart, Kevin Owens. Stone Cold Stunner equals 218. Donald Trump got a Stone Cold Stunner at WrestleMania 23. So, there's definitely, I don't know. Hopefully this video makes sense, but it stems back to Jesus, Cleopatra, Julius Caesar. There's something going on there, Let's see what I put in my other post here. The first post I made, Triple H. Peacock Day was a 325. Triple H equals 325. And the reverse prime cipher, something I've been paying attention to since last year on August 6th. It's just, I'm supposed to learn a new cipher or pay attention to something, and this cipher seems to have a lot of connections, but Stephanie McMahon also equals 325, like Peacock, National Peacock Days on 325. Think about Stone Cold Steve Austin and the skull, right? A lot of his shirts have the skull on it. And Vince McMahon's 76 years old. Triple H had surgery in New Haven, Connecticut, and that's why he ended up retiring or whatever, but that's where Skull and Bones is from and so on. And Hulk Hogan has this big connection to the movie Rocky 3 with Sylvester Stallone, who was born on 7/6, and he turned 76 years old this year. And, Eye of the Tiger, it's the year of the tiger. George Bush, the Skull and Bones member, just turned 76 years old on 7/6 this year. Skull and Bones equals 76. Stephanie McMahon was born in the year 76. Vince McMahon's father was also born on 7/6. Pretty sure he's the founder of the WWE and so on, WWF. And yeah, so he was born on 7/6 as well. I just think there's something important to Skull and Bones with that. Plus, the Georgia Guidestones and all that in Georgia, right? And I'm pretty sure Austin Theory. Oh, my thing's gonna stupid, but Austin Theory, I thought he was from something to do with Georgia, right? Atlanta, Georgia. Born in Atlanta, Georgia. Hulk Hogan, isn't he from like Augusta, Georgia or something, right? Yeah. So who knows? There's got to be some type of connection to that. And there is another connection with the Francis Bacon ciphers. I can't remember what it is, but is it Roddy Piper? Roddy Piper equals 268. I think Hulk Hogan, or his real name, equals 268. Type it out really quick. Terry Bollea. Yeah, Hulk Hogan's full name equals 268, like Roddy Piper, and I thought George Bush equaled 268 or something like that. Can't remember what it is. George Bush has a connection to 268. It's a big thing I talked about. If you read my book, I talked a lot about Hulk Hogan at the very end and how I think Hulk Hogan is a guy to watch out for this year. Just because of all the tiger symbolism and how August 6th is linked to Tisha B'Av, and his birthday was Tisha B'Av in 2018. And Hulk Hogan also came back to the WWE, I'm pretty sure. And then that's when Stone Cold had left for a while. They wanted to have a fight with him, and Stone Cold didn't want to lose to Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan didn't want to lose to Stone Cold. Just trying to think here. He's going to be 69 years old. Hulk Hogan also was in the news back in. I was going to say Hulk Hogan also had a thing about, he got in trouble for being racist for saying the N word, but the big joke is in 2015 is that he always calls everybody brother. So then he said the N word. That was a big joke, but I don't know. I just in my book I talked about watching Hulk Hogan this year. Just from all the they live symbolism and a whole bunch of stuff. His birthday's even 8 months and 6 days before Roddy Piper's birthday. And then, well, he's going to be 69, but can't remember what I even wrote. Like I said, I'll have to go back and look, but I know I talked a lot about Hulk Hogan towards the end of the book and the number 268 and how it was linked up. But remember the RV bombing too? The RV Christmas bombing had a lot to do with They Live, and the guy they said it was, his name was Anthony Quinn Warner, and he looked a lot like Roddy Piper. And then Zach did that live stream with RV Truth, who RV Truth's avatar is Roddy Piper from the movie They Live. And the RV bombing was in Nashville, right? It was Nashville. Where's Nissan Stadium? Right? Isn't Nissan Stadium in Nashville? I'm spelling it wrong is why, but Nissan Stadium. Yeah, it's in Nashville. And the RV bombing was also in Nashville. I never noticed it's on 86 degrees west either. That's really interesting. But remember, the RV bombing was near the Batman building, which is the AT&T building. And AT&T is important to 9/11 because 911 was made the emergency dialing code in 1968, the same year that World Trade Center's construction began on the date August 6th, 68. And the Wrestlemania 38 just so happened to be held at AT&T Stadium or whatever, right? It was the AT&T Center or AT&T Stadium in Arlington. So there's a definite connection to how that relates, right, to the RV bombing. Think about 9/11 in relation to George Bush and the New World Order and his father giving the speech about the New World Order exactly 11 years before 9/11 2001, and how NWO equals 11, and how New York's the 11th state and the World Trade Centers were look like an 11, and the first plane to hit was flight AA. A is the first letter, so like a 1-1, and then it was colon 11 11 11. A lot of stuff with 11, 9/11, even the day leaving 111 days in the year. And just think about Hulk Hogan, the NWO, in relation to 9/11. It's pretty interesting. There was also a story a few years back. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember what year it was, but I know Ronda Rousey was on this TV show called 911. There was a TV show called 911, and she was in the news for almost severing her finger just before the premiere of that show came on and so on. And there were some other things with that too. A ton of stuff. I should pull it up, but Ronda Rousey's on the show 911 and almost severed her finger. It's definitely important. 9/11. There's something definitely important to 9/11 symbolism. When you think about Tisha B'Av and how it's important to the 9th day of the 11th month on the Hebrew civil calendar. Notice that Nissan Stadium also used to be called Adelphia Coliseum, which is interesting, thinking about Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, right? And then Hulk Hogan got his revenge against Earthquake in Philadelphia. Think about love and Valentine's Day. It's just interesting. It's called Adelphia. And of course, the capital of the country, Jordan, used to be called Philadelphia, and then it was destroyed by earthquakes, and it was linked to Michael Jordan. But I forgot to pull up the thing. It wasn't 268 that I talked about in my book with Hulk Hogan. I went and looked. It's 264. But I had later realized that the number 268 was really important. His name equaled 268. Roddy Piper equaled 268. George W. Bush, he equals 268 in the Fibonacci ciphers, something I was talking about with August 6th, so it's interesting. And, think about George Bush, too, in relation to Texas and whatever, and how it's linked up to 9/11 and AT&T Center and so on. But Tennessee Titans, who play here, equal 268. And SummerSlam this year just so happens to be 268 days after the movie They Live released, after the 33rd anniversary. So, and 9/11 had a whole, 1968, the year 911 was made the emergency dialing code. That was 33 years after, 2001 was 33 years later. Of course, false flag is connected up to that and so on. So, I want to see what Nissan Stadium equals. I don't know if I ever typed that out. Nissan even equals 86. How interesting. And 22. August 6th is also important to the Chinese Tiger Year, a big thing I've talked about. And Ronda Rousey's birthday just so happens to be the first day of the Chinese Tiger Year this year. It's February 1st is when it began. That's funny. And 76, like the Skull and Bones connection. Nissan Stadium. I don't know. I've seen different spellings of Nissan as well, though. Because I've seen it just Nissan is just with an S, I think. Let's see. Nissan 33. There's some interesting things with it, so I'll look at a few other things, then I'm going to get off here. I gotta go to bed. Nashville has that connection even to New York and 9/11, 102 minutes. New York equals 39. So number connected to George Bush, 208. Let's see here. Nashville. Once again, it connects back to 39. I don't know. I'll have to look more into it. What's SummerSlam? And SummerSlam is 186 too. Once again, that's interesting because August 6th is the 186th day of the Tiger year. SummerSlam's 134, even like Tisha B'Av. Huh. 9/11. So there's definitely some. I don't know. It's connected. What is? Oh, sorry. SummerSlam 2022. I just wonder what how many years it's been going. 35 years, right? So last year was the 34th. This is the 211th day as well. And Donald Trump equals 211. That's the 47th prime number. That's the day that the Vatican was established in 1929, the same year as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and the stock market crash. Think about 47 and the president and so on. President, White House government, Republican, Democrat, all equal 47. 35th, like Catholic. Could be very interesting. This is the guy who fought Austin Theory, too. So this is the guy who fought Austin Theory at WrestleMania. You know, you know what's crazy? I'm just seeing this now. Austin Theory is going to be just looking at this, and this guy's like a kicker too. Pat McAfee's like used to be the kicker for the Colts or something. Pretty sure. Yeah, he was the kicker for the Colts, but they have that 201 connection, support to the Jesuits and so on. And it's the 35th SummerSlam. But Bobby Lashley is going to be fighting Austin Theory. And this just sticks out to me because when Donald Trump was at WrestleMania, he wrestled with Bobby Lashley. Hold on. Can't even type here. WrestleMania 23. I swear, could be wrong. I swear this guy was like on Donald Trump's, he fought with Donald Trump. Yes, he did. Bobby Lashley with Donald Trump, and he fought this guy with Mr. McMahon and so on. How interesting. So yeah, weird. So this guy fought with Donald Trump at the WrestleMania 23 when Stone Cold gave him a stunner. Just trying to figure this out here. Bobby Lashley. Let's see what he is in gematria. Bobby Lashley, 47, 61, the Jesus numbers, but let's see what it is in Francis Bacon. Well, this 254 sticks out because it's a skull and bones number. Skull and bones, right? 9/11 on the 254th day of the year. Stuff like never forget equals 322, the skull and bones number. Dustin equals 268 as well. 214, even like Valentine's Day. It's 187 that a lot of people associate with the Jesuits. So, let me go back and look at Sir Bobby Lashley. July 16th. He's 46 years old. Even that even fits with the Catholic narrative. Huh. Sorry, I should get off here. I really need to go to bed, but just curious what. I want to look up that other girl too, the Ronda Rousey girl again. I don't see anything there with his real name, but nothing stands out right away. July 16th, 16/7, the 39th prime now. I've been talking a lot about 39 and 167 for the last year or so. Just under the Logan Paul's fighting Bianca Belair. That's probably important too. Fresh Prince, Peacock Symbolism. What's her birthday really quick? April 9th, the 99th day of the year. And she's 33 and she's from Tennessee. Oh man. Definitely have to look at her again. I'll do it at a different thing, but Ronda Rousey is going to be fighting Liv Morgan. Are you kidding me? Liv Morgan's birthday is 6/8 or 8/6 even. You know, it's like, what a joke. We'll just type it down this big old thing here. Interesting. I mean, she has the Catholic number too. This number reported to Donald Trump as well. This number is important to Donald Trump. WWE is 51. I think the word wrestler equals 51. Liv Morgan. What's her real name? Daddy-O. That can't be a real name, can it? About 219, huh? Well, I'll leave it there. I think I made my point. I really do need to go to bed. I wonder, there's so many things I wonder about, though. SmackDown, Chris Rock, Peacock Symbolism. Her name doesn't really ring a bell, like, as far... I don't even know who this girl is. I don't watch wrestling anymore. I did go to wrestling back on, like, January 14th, and a bunch of crazy stuff happened when I went, but... Daddy-O... I don't know. I don't watch... I knew, like, two wrestlers when I went and watched wrestling. Maybe a few more than that, but... Like, Sheamus was there. Kind of an older guy, but... SmackDown... Pretty sure the next thing was in Nashville, too, after Omaha, so... It was linked up to Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and stuff like that, but... Liv... I don't know, her name just symbolically, Liv Morgan, doesn't really stand out to me that much. Compared, sometimes, like, the name will stick out to you. Like Bianca Belair and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and so on. It just doesn't stick out that much to me. The Miz, the guy from the real world. Oh, whatever. We'll end it there. I feel like I'm just missing something. There's something I'm missing with how the peacock symbolism is related, but it definitely has something to do with the stock market. It has to with the Martha Stewart story, and SummerSlam was going to be held, the day before the anniversary of Roddy Piper dying. Nissan Stadium, Nashville, where the RV bombing was. This is also my daughter's birthday, July 30th, so I wonder if I have some weird synchronicity with her on that day. I guess we will see, so Actually, I need to go back and look too. I'm just rambling now, but I need to go back and I talked about the Peacock symbolism being synced up to the teacher Dennis Fett. Dennis Fett, Minden, Iowa. Hold on, let's see. MyLife.com. What's that? Trying to figure out what his birthday was. Riverside. So, well, I don't know this big Peacock guy, but yeah, he was from Minden, Iowa. I know he was from Minden, Iowa. It's my old like. I never had him, but he was a choir teacher in the town I live in, and the Peacock symbolism was all linked up to this train dream theme that I had. And remember, we just had that Minden, Missouri train wreck, and the dream theme stems back to this dream I had about my friend's father dying in a car wreck, and then he died wrecking his truck the very next day, just before getting to Minden, Iowa, and where the highway that he wrecked on turns into a railroad highway, that like a train. And this guy's from Minden, and he is also like the biggest Peacock guy, and he was on Jay Leno, and the girl that he took on Jay Leno had the same birthday as Jay Leno, I think, or something. God, what is his birthday? I can't figure it out. I'm just gonna end the video there. I need to quit rambling, but I guarantee it's connected to this guy. It just has to be connected to this guy. But hopefully it makes sense. If it doesn't, watch some videos in the description. I'm telling you this. I'm talking about things that have been going on since, years, like almost 10 years ago, this pattern that I have been following. So if it doesn't make sense, I apologize, but there's a lot of information to recollect and re-explain. But definitely something with the Peacocks. See what happens on SummerSlam. See what happens on August 6th. Peace out.